All right guys, so I'm gonna show you a few stretches you can do to get your hips warmed up. And you can do these before or after your workout. We're gonna do some dynamic stretching as well as some static stretching. So I would recommend the dynamic stretches to do before your workout and the static to do afterwards. But this is just generally for loosening up your hips, right? You can also do this without working out as well. All right, so once you have your mat ready to go, we're gonna start with those dynamic stretches just to get us warmed up a little bit. So we're gonna start in what's called the world's greatest stretch. So in a runner's lunge, your back leg should be straight, your front knee is bent. You're trying to feel the stretch right here in your hip flexors. You're gonna rotate that arm up towards the ceiling and make sure you're breathing as you stretch. Bring the elbows close to the ground as you can. Then you're gonna shift into a lateral lunge. Try to keep this heel on the floor, chest up. Then shift to the other side, and then you're gonna switch back to that lunge on that other side. Right, and then repeat again, arm comes up, elbow down to the ground, shift to that lateral lunge, other side, and then back to that lunge. Just repeat that a couple times, shifting back and forth, right, from one side to the other side. We're working our hips in their full range of motion right now, so you're really gonna feel that hip open up nice and wide. All right, so that's number one. That's your active dynamic stretch. Next up is one of my favorites, the pigeon pose. So you probably heard this from yoga. It's a yoga stretch, but it's really good for your hips. So your front knee is bent and then your back leg is straight. Now, if you can't bring your heel all the way out, you might start closer in. That's totally fine. Just slowly over time, as you get more flexible and more mobile, try to bring that heel out as far as you can. Take a few deep breaths, right? Try to square off those hips here, staying upright. And then if you can, slowly start to walk yourself forward. Start to walk yourself forward into that stretch. And to make it even more intense, you start walking away from the hip that's on the floor. And then just make sure you're breathing deeply here. Take about 5 deep breaths in and out, in and out. And then you can walk it back in. We're gonna go ahead and switch to the other side. Now, when it comes to static stretches like this one, if you're holding for over a minute, it actually becomes a little bit detrimental. So I would say hold for around 20 to 30 seconds and get that stretch at least 3 times, right? So once you're finished with one side stretching, deep breath in and out a couple times for about 20 to 30 seconds. Then you're gonna go back to the first side and repeat the stretch and then switch back and forth. So about 3 times on each side. All right, squad, so that's your pigeon pose. Next up, we're gonna get into a half kneeling stretch here. So you're gonna need a wall or a box, something like this. Here I have this pole, and then something to protect your knees. So I have this nice squishy trooper mat. So you're gonna put one knee up. This is kind of funny to get into. So I would suggest putting this one knee up, kneeling, and then you pop your back foot against that pole or that wall, and you can slide it in. And then from here, you just try to press up so you're upright, but making sure those hips are both facing forward. You're gonna feel it pretty intensely in the front of your hips, right? Okay, so here is a little bit different. You're gonna contract your glute muscle, squeeze that glute muscle as hard as you can, and then as you release it, you slide forward a little bit into that stretch. Take a deep breath in and out. Then we're gonna come back, squeeze that glute muscle, press those hips forward, try to tuck your pelvis under as much as you can, squeeze that muscle, squeeze it, release, and stretch forward into that hip. It's a very small movement. As you can see, I'm not really moving a lot, but I can definitely feel every time I squeeze and release, that hip stretches out a little bit more. All right, so we're gonna switch to that other side, other foot against that pole, back knee up. Same thing, make sure those hips are square, right? And then I'm not arching my back here. I'm keeping everything in alignment so my hips are right underneath my shoulder blades. I'm squeezing that muscle really hard. As I release, I slide forward and it opens up. So what happens in your body is when you flex one muscle, if you're flexing, like for example, your quad, if you flex your quad, your hamstring is actually gonna release in effect of your quad flexing. So that's why it's a kind of a cool technique to use when you stretch. to use the antagonist muscle to contract while the agonist muscle is releasing. So that's what we did in the hips here. Your glutes flexed, right? So your hip flexors can release. So those are two static stretches. You can do that pigeon pose and that half kneeling stretch. And then you can also do that dynamic stretch to warm up. So there you have 3 stretches here warming up those hips. Just to go in a little bit more depth about your hips here, you have your hip flexors, right, which run up and down, and you have your psoas, which connects from here back to your lower spine, right? So this muscle is actually most commonly tight among people because we're sitting down a lot, we're bending over our desks. So it's a really important muscle to stretch out. So that pigeon pose is gonna be super helpful for this one. The half kneeling stretch is gonna be really helpful for those muscles that run straight up and down and into your quads. All right, guys, there you have some hip stretches for you. I hope that was helpful. You can do that dynamic stretch before you work out, and you can do those static stretches after you work out, or just when you're feeling tight one day, you can do those all together. Guys, for more content like this, please like, comment, and subscribe to our Trooper Fitness YouTube channel. You can also find us on Instagram at Trooper Fitness. And if you guys want to get a workout in, or you want a more extended mobility workout, then you can check us out on Trooper On Demand. It's our Trooper On Demand app where you can follow along with those workouts. I hope that helps, and I will see you guys next time.